Welcome back to Benny's Custom Works, proudly supported by Valvoline and Sparesbox. Don't forget Benny5 on checkout. This week, we're going to be addressing some of the issues on my Ram. I've had the thing for over 8,000 kilometers now, and I've started to work out some of the day-to-day stuff that I'm having issues with, and some of the other stuff I've seen mentioned on the internet. We're also going to talk about some of the things the issues that I had when I received the vehicle. And yeah, going to have a bit of a chat about it, going to fix some problems. I should preface this with the fact that none of these issues are major and nothing's really affecting the actual drivability of the vehicle. It's more like creature comfort and ergonomic layout, being that this effectively used to be a left-hand drive vehicle, this used to be over there, and everything's been shifted around. Obviously, if you buy a US delivered vehicle, none of these issues are going to be relevant to your car. But super basic things like there's no audio controls on the steering wheel, and 95% of vehicles that's not going to be a massive issue, but the volume knob is still on the left side, being a left-hand drive head unit effectively. A few other things that I kind of feel like should have been addressed before the vehicle was actually delivered at the dealership. And the same thing, I'm being a little bit fussy here, but it annoys me because when I worked at a dealership, when we did pre-deliveries or PDs, all of these things would have been amended or taken care of before it even got to a customer. Just super simple stuff. The washer bottle was empty. The wiper blades are actually junk because what I believe is happened is because the vehicle sat so long between physical manufacture in the USA and then importation, conversion and delivery, there's probably a 9-month lead time. The wiper blades were just junk. They were hard. They didn't clean the screen. But the biggest issue for me that I also think should have been rectified during either the second stage of manufacturing or at the pre-delivery stage is the wheel alignment was actually horrendous. The car drove terribly, it tracked badly, and the steering wheel wasn't actually centered. So basically, as soon as I got the vehicle home, I did about 100 Ks between picking it up from the dealer and bringing it home. And yeah, the wheel alignment was horrible, the steering wheel was out. And if you, as a consumer, don't know any better, that could mean you're up for front tyres pretty early on in the life of the vehicle. I would argue that the tyres on this vehicle should last between 50 and 80,000 kilometres, but that also is if your wheel alignment's spot on. There's no way this thing would have done that. So yeah, I did mention it to the dealer and they kind of said, oh, we don't do the pre-deliveries in-house anymore. They're taken care of before the vehicle's delivered to us. So fair chance to say that the people doing the PDs don't actually know these issues exist. And there's every chance they're not actually road testing the vehicles either. So potentially there's more stuff going on in the background that needs to be looked at with the second stage conversion on these vehicles. But yeah, all in all, it's still a great truck. I really love it, but I thought I would bring these issues to people's attention if you've also bought one as well. And like I said, potentially don't know some of these issues are going to cause you problems down the road. So yeah, the wheel alignment I think for me is the biggest issue that needs to be attended to. But that being said, we're now going to actually pull the steering wheel off. We're going to put some audio controls on it. And I'm also actually going to upgrade the steering wheel itself because the base model Express 1500 is just a plastic steering wheel, which I don't love. I had the leather done on the seats and I kind of overlooked the fact that this thing is still a molded plastic steering wheel like it would have been 25 years ago. So I've actually had another one of these retrimmed. I did buy it secondhand, but the leather wasn't great. So I actually had it retrimmed. And then we're going to basically build 1 out of 2, whereas we're going to steal all the existing buttons on the fascia side, including the fascia, and then we're going to fit the audio controls because they actually go on the back of the wheel on this particular vehicle. We're going to reuse the airbag and we're going to reuse some other bits and pieces. So we'll pull it apart and show you guys how to fit audio controls to your DS Ram 1500 while we're doing this one. Before you do anything with the SRS or airbag system, make sure you disconnect the battery. This particular vehicle, the wiring's actually quite short, so it's pulling the terminal back onto the battery. So I've just used this rubber exhaust hanger to space it and isolate it. That means there's no way of accidentally making contact, because if that were to contact the battery terminal potentially while you're disconnecting the airbag, you could be in for a nasty surprise. So yeah, I recommend completely isolating that. It's also worth keeping the little rubber caps or plastic caps that come with new batteries for this exact reason. Unfortunately, I don't have any right now. Now these Ram 1500 airbags and potentially other FCA products are probably the worst designed airbag I've ever seen in my life, because the way that you have to unclip them, you actually need to turn the steering wheel around and pick it through the back of the wheel, as opposed to most Japanese and European bags that they've got some screws on the side. So Yeah, this one's a little bit of a challenge, especially if you haven't played with them before. Luckily, the first one I pulled apart was on a steering column that wasn't in a vehicle, so I got to see how it worked. But yeah, you do need to get into the back with a pick or a small screwdriver and unclip it, and then it will come out. Once you've released it from the steering wheel, you need to unclip the wiring as per usual. I won the battle, the airbag's out. You do need to be mindful of disconnecting these pretty gently and correctly, because if you get it wrong, there's every chance you're going to break the wiring, and then that means you're going to have to replace the clock spring, which is probably about $1,300, and fair chance there's none in stock, so be careful of that. Also make sure that you do remove this plastic plug. It may be a little bit hard to see there, using a double leg pick like this or something similar, so you can reuse it without breaking it. You could potentially unpick it and refeed the cable tie through it, but it's much easier to just unclip it off the back of the airbag. Also make sure, if you are going to do this particular task, to reattach that clip so that the wiring's not impeded or damaged in any way, because it also may pinch the wiring and cause it to short to ground, which will mean your SRS system won't work, and it may also deploy the airbag at the incorrect time. But we're going to pull the steering wheel off now and swap the bits over, and then I'll finally have audio controls and I won't be raging all the time. Well, I'll be raging less. Every single time we touch a steering wheel, I will always say it, because some people don't watch every video. Make sure, if you are removing a steering wheel, that you leave either the retaining bolt or the retaining nut somewhat still engaged in the steering column, because if you don't and the steering wheel releases, there's every chance you're going to break your nose. Don't do it. I've seen people do it. It's not a fun time. Pop. Once the taper releases, you can remove your bolt or nut. Then the steering wheel will come off nicely. Make sure, however, that you do unclip any of the wiring on the column, because the same thing, if you leave that attached and go to pull the steering wheel off, you are going to break your clock spring, and they're about $1,200, and you probably can't get one anyway. And I probably should have tested if I can actually use these audio controls. Like the wiring harness is actually different. So that's the standard non-audio control one, which can go over there. And then the audio one's obviously different. It's got the 2 extra multi buttons. I believe it's going to be for basically the knobs on the radio, the tuner, and the volume, which is the whole thing that we're doing this for. So hopefully it works. This is the steering wheel we don't need, so don't put that back together. So this is another Ram DS 1500 steering wheel that I actually purchased in the US. The main reason I bought a whole steering wheel was so that I could get the audio controls, because the wreckers didn't want to separate it. Further to that, they didn't even actually want to separate the steering wheel from the column, so I had to buy a whole column. That basically just went in the scrap bin as soon as I got back to Circle D. That's another story. So this is the back cover, which obviously has the audio controls integrated. Worth mentioning too also that this other factory shroud, which comes on the Australian delivered ones, has what looks like a provision for switches. However, it's a completely different shape to this one here, so I'm not quite sure what that's about. But yeah, this is what you need to basically add your audio controls. It comes with the loom and obviously the switches. You can buy this as a accessory or a replacement part through Ram dealers, and from memory it's about $600. There's also a few different aftermarket sellers. So yeah, I highly recommend looking for a second-hand one in the US, because you're probably going to save at least 50% even by the time you land it here. That being said, also it did come with a steering wheel. It was leather trimmed already, but the leather was pretty flogged. I think the truck that it came from had about 200,000 miles on it, so it was pretty weathered. But yeah, I had Kira up at OG Customs actually retrim this for me, and as usual, she's done a cracking job. Kira's done lots of work for me in the last few years, and yeah, it's always a spot on job, so massive thanks to her for this, and also some other projects which we're going to show you soon. Let's put the wheel together. This is really hard. I'm making this way harder than it needs to be. It's also worth mentioning too, when you pull your Ram steering wheel apart, there's actually 2 different screws in it. There's a T25 screw, which actually goes into the aluminium of the steering wheel, and then there's the Phillips head, which goes between the plastic only. So yeah, make sure you don't mess those up, because you'll probably either strip the thread out in the plastic or damage the aluminium, which either of those aren't easily repairable. So yeah, keep in mind where these screws came from when you pull it apart. It's crazy that that whole one, which is the same amount of buttons, has like 3 wires, and then this one has like 7,000. I think because it's cruise control, it can't be CAN or something. They might be resistance based, but this might be circuit based or something. I'm just talking, just making noise with my face. Oh, it looks so nice. Leather wheel again, I'm stoked. No more wheel that feels like plastic, because it's plastic. It may not really have been clear when I was removing the airbag, but these wire clip or wire springs are actually what holds it to the steering wheel. So there's basically a molded part in the steering wheel that goes through and holds it. There's no other sort of disconnect other than actually basically deforming or bending these out of the way. So yeah, they're a bit challenging to do. And I ended up actually using a little brake adjusting tool I found was the best thing to actually undo it. I tried a few different screwdrivers and picks, but that actually seemed to get in there and give it a good bit of leverage and pop it. You can put a little bit of pressure on the steering wheel to relieve these, but you've got to do it in a special order to make sure that you don't clip the ones back in that you've already unclipped, because I found that a few times doing it by that way, it clipped it back in and it was pretty frustrating. So yeah, pop them from the bottom, then one side, then the other side, I found worked pretty good. Ta-da!
I was expecting to.
Look, Mum, no hands. Never heard of her. I don't even know what that song is. I don't even know what station. Oh, it's Triple J. Ugh. I'm sure they have some version of the hottest something on today, because it seems to be all they ever do now. What's the deal with the hottest 200? While we're on the Triple J chats, have you heard of the hottest 200?
Is that on Double J?
No, that's on Triple J the day before they play the hottest 100.
Huh.
If you called something the hottest 200, would you think they're going to play 200 songs that day or 100 songs?
200.
They play 100 songs. So it's from 200 to 101. So it's like the 100 people that didn't make the cut for the hottest 100 get played the day before.
100 runners up.
I'm so confused. I honestly always thought that was 200 songs. Having never listened to it in my life, but heard other people talk about it, I always thought that there was 200 songs. There are not. I'm not angry, Triple J. I'm disappointed. I would have thought for sure that would have been the track or the skip, and the other side would have been volume. I don't know why, but in my head that was always going to be the other way around. Which I suppose you could change that in the wiring of the steering wheel. You could actually swap those two.
Is it worth it?
No, it's not worth it. But it's not worth it for me. But if it upset you that much, the switches are actually the same, and you can just swap the wires left to right, so that the right hand could do skip or track or scan on the radio. I wonder what the button does. Ah, bangers. So now my phone's connected to it, because that button in the middle there controls the source. So you press that one in the middle and it changes the source. Then what's the one in the middle of the other one? Oh, okay. That's cool.
What sauce do you have? Barbecue or tomato?
Is that even a question? Barbecue all day.
Yeah, yeah.
What a silly question. I swear you get to 13 and go from tomato to barbecue, hey. I don't know any adults that have tomato sauce on sausages. Like none. Never. Or ketchup.
Ketchup, yeah.
It's kind of tomato sauce, but it's kind of not. I did have a good relish that I'd consider putting on sausages at one point. Kind of like
fair.
But like a savoury relish, not one of those real sweet, like almost like a chutney.
It sort of tastes more like barbecue anyway.
It does. Do you know there's tomato sauce in barbecue sauce?
Yes. Isn't it made out of basically the same thing?
Yeah, I think there's just more brown in it.
Fun facts.
These gas struts are pretty powerful, like holding it at that, like that's like 300 mil and it's still holding it up. Nice. Now it's come to the time of the episode, the all important wiper blade change. So good little tip when you remove your wiper arms. I'll just fight this one for a second. Put a rag around the end of the arm before you put it back on the screen. That'll ensure you're not going to smash your screen by leaving the arms up. If for whatever reason they do decide to come down, the force in that spring will 9 times out of 10 actually smash the screen. And one of these screens is probably not available at the moment either. So the joys of an import. Going to get our magical ruler and check the length. So we've got a, let's call it 28, which we have there. 26. Lucky I had a 26, a 24 and a 28. The Packages are so nice, I don't want to rip it. Now the wiper blades we're fitting today are the Valvoline ViewMax flat hybrid type. These are available for most vehicles. They come with a ton of different adapters, and if you want to buy them, you can actually pick them up at Bunnings in Australia and I believe New Zealand. I'm not sure where else you can pick them up globally, but they're probably in your local parts store, so check it out. Let's chuck this one on the car. Now all of the Valvoline ViewMax wiper arms actually come with blade protectors so that the blade edge is maintained and not damaged in transit. One caveat, make sure you remove these, because if you don't, the wiper blade performance is going to suck and you're going to be more grumpy than when your old one sucked a little bit. These will suck worse. Then you remove them, they're going to be really good. So make sure you take these off. Well, that pretty much wraps us up for another day, but I did want to show you guys before we finish up the seat for the Cresta. Yeah, it's come up amazingly well, and we've actually recycled all the original back seat material from a spare back seat that I purchased in Japan. Yeah, Kira knocked it out of the park. This was the vision that I had almost exactly, and she just brought it to life. So yeah, massive thanks to Kira at OG Customs again. And yeah, can't wait to take this to the US with me. And I'm getting on a plane on Monday. It's currently Friday now, so by the time you guys see this, I'll most likely actually be in the US at Sick Week, or maybe even having already done Sick Week. Tons of videos to come from that. I'm going to be filming Sick Week itself. Dad and I are going to be road tripping with Paggers and one of his mates as well. So there's going to be tons of content coming from the US. I might try and do some more junkyard tours and all sorts of stuff, because I've got about a week after Sick Week once we finish up. So there's going to be tons and tons of footage, probably too much. You guys might get bored of it. We're going to film it and we're going to have fun. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.